My name is Sarah Thompson, and if you'd asked me 2 years ago what kind of person I was, I would have said I was the sort who always put family first. I believed in helping people. I believed in second chances. And most importantly, I believed that when someone you loved was struggling, you didn't turn your back on them. Unfortunately, that belief nearly cost me my marriage, my savings, and my peace of mind. The person responsible, my sister-in-law Emma, and the lie she told was so outrageous, so manipulative that even now I struggle to believe we fell for it. But we did, for 8 long months. And if it hadn't been for my 10-year-old daughter accidentally recording something she was never supposed to see, Emma might still be living in my house today. My husband James and I lived in a quiet suburb outside Manchester. We weren't rich by any means. James worked as a civil engineer and I managed a small online home decor business. We had a comfortable life, a modest detached house, a reliable car, enough savings to feel secure, and most importantly, a happy family. Our daughter Lily was 10 years old. She was bright, funny, endlessly curious, and far smarter than most people gave her credit for. Looking back, I think she was the only person who saw through Emma before any of us did. At the time, we just didn't realize it. Emma had always been complicated. She was James's younger sister by 4 years. Growing up, she'd apparently been the family favorite. The charming one, the funny one, the one everyone rushed to rescue whenever something went wrong, and things always seemed to go wrong. By the time I met James, Emma had already bounced between several jobs, countless relationships, and more financial disasters than I could keep track of. Every crisis followed the same pattern. Emma would make terrible decisions. Something would fall apart, then someone else would step in and clean up the mess. Usually James. I never liked how often she relied on him, but family dynamics can be complicated and I tried not to interfere. After all, she wasn't my sister. Everything changed one wet November evening. I was preparing dinner when the doorbell rang. When I opened the front door, I immediately knew something was wrong. Emma stood on the doorstep trembling. Her eyes were red from crying. Rain soaked her coat. She looked utterly devastated. "Emma!" She burst into tears. Within seconds she was sobbing so hard she could barely speak. I brought her inside, made her tea, sat her down. Eventually she managed to explain. Her boyfriend Tom had left her. They'd had a huge argument. According to her, he'd thrown her out. Then came the bombshell. "I'm pregnant." I remember feeling physically sick. The situation sounded awful. Pregnant, homeless, abandoned. No matter what mistakes Emma had made in the past, nobody deserved that, or so I thought. When James got home an hour later, Emma told him the same story. By the end of the evening, she'd moved into our guest room, just temporarily. At least that's what we believed. The first few weeks seemed normal. Emma appeared grateful. She helped around the house occasionally. She spoke about finding somewhere to live once she'd sorted herself out. She talked endlessly about the baby, names, clothes, future plans. She painted herself as a frightened, expectant mother trying her best, and we believed every word. James especially. He was protective of her, he always had been. I wanted to be supportive too, so I did everything I could. I bought maternity clothes, cooked meals, helped her apply for financial support, even cleared space in the guest room for baby supplies. Part of me genuinely felt sorry for her. The other part wondered why she seemed surprisingly relaxed for someone supposedly facing single motherhood. Around the 3rd week, little things started bothering me. Nothing major, just small inconsistencies. For example, Emma never seemed interested in doctor's appointments. Whenever I asked how they were going, she'd give vague answers. "Fine, everything's normal, they just checked the baby." That was it, no details, no excitement, nothing. Most pregnant women I knew loved sharing scan photos, talking about appointments, discussing milestones. Emma never did. At first I dismissed it. Every pregnancy is different. Not everyone likes talking about personal matters. Still, something felt off. Then came Christmas. Normally Christmas in our house was warm and cheerful. That year felt different. Emma slowly stopped behaving like a guest. Instead, she acted as though she owned the place. She criticized meals, complained about Lily making noise, left messes everywhere. Used our credit card for online shopping after accidentally saving the details. Each incident seemed small on its own, but together they painted an ugly picture. One afternoon, I found her ordering expensive skincare products. Emma, aren't you trying to save money? She barely looked up. I'm pregnant. I deserve to treat myself. I remember staring at her. That phrase became her answer to everything. Why couldn't she help clean? Pregnant. Why couldn't she contribute financially? Pregnant. Why couldn't she look for work? Pregnant. The pregnancy had become a shield protecting her from every responsibility. By February, she'd been living with us for almost 4 months. The strain on our household was becoming obvious. Our grocery bill had increased dramatically, utilities had risen, and the constant tension was exhausting. James noticed it too. But every time he tried discussing Emma's future plans, she'd start crying, then he'd back off. Guilt was her greatest weapon, and she knew exactly how to use it. One evening, Lily asked a question that caught me off guard. Mom, yes, why doesn't Aunt Emma have baby pictures? I looked up from my laptop. What do you mean? Everyone at school says pregnant mums get pictures of babies before they're born. I smiled. Scans, yeah. Those, maybe she just doesn't show them. Lily frowned. I asked her, what did she say? She changed the subject. At the time I laughed it off. Kids notice strange things, but later that night I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why had Emma never shown us a single scan? Not one. The following week I finally asked directly, do you have any scan pictures? The reaction was immediate, too immediate. Emma's entire body tensed, her face flushed. Why? I was just curious. Do you think I'm lying? No, because it sounds like you think I'm lying. The conversation escalated rapidly. Within minutes she was crying, accusing me of attacking her, questioning her integrity, making herself the victim. I ended up apologizing, yet somehow I walked away feeling as though I'd done nothing wrong, because honestly, it had been a perfectly reasonable question. A few days later, something happened that made my concerns worse. I came home early from work. As I entered the house, I heard Emma talking on the phone. She didn't know I was there. Her bedroom door was slightly open. And what I heard chilled me. I'm sorted for months, she laughed. They pay for everything. A pause, then another laugh. No chance they're kicking me out. I froze. Something about her tone felt wrong. There was no gratitude, no relief. Only smug confidence. As though she'd successfully pulled off a clever trick. Then she noticed me. The call ended instantly, and for the rest of the evening she avoided eye contact. That night, lying in bed beside James, I couldn't sleep. Every instinct told me something wasn't right. The missing scans, the lack of appointments, the strange phone call, the constant manipulation, the stories that never quite matched. For the first time, a thought entered my mind. A thought I immediately hated myself for having. What if Emma wasn't pregnant at all? I pushed it away. No one would lie about something like that. Would they? At least that's what I told myself. I had no idea how wrong I was. And I certainly had no idea that within a few months, my 10-year-old daughter would uncover a secret that would destroy Emma's entire web of lies forever. My sister-in-law faked her pregnancy to live in my house for free. What my daughter recorded destroyed everything. The thought should have sounded ridiculous. What if Emma wasn't pregnant? Every time it crossed my mind, I felt guilty. Who suspects something like that? Who looks at a woman claiming to be carrying a child and thinks she's lying? But once the doubt appeared, it became impossible to ignore. Suddenly, I started noticing things I had overlooked before. Things that didn't make sense. Things that should have raised questions months earlier. And the more I noticed, the harder it became to convince myself everything was normal. By March, Emma claimed she was 7 months pregnant. According to her, the baby was healthy. Everything was progressing perfectly, yet somehow there was still no evidence. No scan photos, no appointment letters, no hospital paperwork, nothing. When I had been pregnant with Lily, our kitchen table had practically disappeared under medical documents. Appointment reminders, leaflets, scan reports, information packs, pregnancy-generated paperwork constantly. Emma had none, not a single piece. At first I told myself she might keep everything in her room, then I realized something. For someone who spent most of her day online, Emma shared absolutely everything on social media. Photos of meals, photos of shopping trips, photos of herself watching television, photos of coffee, photos of sunsets, photos of absolutely nothing. Yet she never posted anything about the pregnancy. Not one scan, not one baby-related update, not one hospital visit. It was strange. Very strange. One Saturday morning, my friend Claire came over for coffee. Claire had been my closest friend for nearly 15 years. She was practical, honest, and never afraid to say what she thought. After Emma disappeared upstairs, Claire leaned closer. "Can I ask you something?" I already knew what was coming. "About Emma," she nodded. "Is she definitely pregnant?" I stared at her. "You think it too?" Claire looked relieved. I thought I was going mad. "What makes you suspicious?" Claire lowered her voice. Her bump, my stomach tightened. "What about it?" "It changes." The exact same thing I'd noticed. Some days Emma looked heavily pregnant. Other days she barely looked pregnant at all. I had convinced myself I was imagining it. Apparently I wasn't. Over the next few weeks I paid closer attention, and Claire was right. The changes were impossible to ignore. One morning Emma looked enormous. That evening she looked significantly smaller, then she'd appear larger again the next day. I tried finding innocent explanations. Different clothing, different angles, different posture, anything. But none of those explanations felt convincing. Deep down, I knew something wasn't adding up. The tension inside our house continued growing. Emma contributed nothing financially, nothing practically, and increasingly little emotionally. Instead, she acted like a permanent guest in a hotel. Meals appeared, bills were paid, laundry was done, and she expected it all without question. Meanwhile, James and I were working harder than ever. The extra expenses were hurting us. We canceled a planned holiday, delayed repairs on the house, reduced unnecessary spending. Yet Emma continued ordering takeaway meals several times a week, often using money she claimed she didn't have. One evening I finally lost patience. "Where does all this money come from?" she shrugged. "Friends help." "What friends?" "People who care about me." The answer felt deliberately vague, almost rehearsed. Around that time, Lily started becoming uncomfortable around Emma. At first I assumed they were simply spending less time together. Then one night Lily knocked on my bedroom door. "Mum, what's wrong?" She hesitated. "I don't think Aunt Emma likes me." I sat up immediately. "What happened?" Lily climbed onto the bed. "She keeps telling me to stay out of her room. Maybe she just wants privacy." "I know," she looked down. "But she gets really angry." Children often notice emotional undercurrents adults miss. Something about Lily's expression bothered me. "Did she shout at you?" "A little." That wasn't acceptable, no matter how stressed someone was. The next morning I mentioned it to Emma. Her reaction was surprisingly defensive. "I need boundaries." "She's 10. Exactly, she's always asking questions." "What questions?" Emma paused, then looked away. "Random questions?" That answer didn't satisfy me, but I let it go, at least temporarily. A week later, James decided he wanted to attend one of Emma's medical appointments. His reasoning was simple. As her brother, he wanted to support her, especially since the birth was supposedly getting closer. That evening, he approached her gently. "When's your next appointment?" Emma looked up from her phone. "Why, I thought I could come." The silence that followed felt uncomfortable. Then came the tears. Instantly, as though somebody had flipped a switch. "You don't trust me," James blinked. "What, you think I'm lying?" "No, everyone thinks I'm lying." Within seconds she was sobbing, claiming we were stressing her, claiming the baby could be harmed, claiming she felt attacked. The entire conversation collapsed. Later that night, James admitted something. For a second I thought she'd be happy. Happy that I wanted to support her. I looked at him because I'd had the exact same thought. A genuine expectant mother would usually welcome support. Emma treated it like an interrogation. The following month brought another strange development. Emma announced she'd chosen a hospital nearly 40 minutes away. The decision made no sense. There were several excellent hospitals much closer. When James asked why, she gave another vague answer. "I've heard good things." That was it, no further explanation. Again, it felt like she hadn't prepared for follow-up questions. By April, my trust in Emma was hanging by a thread. I wasn't alone. James had started noticing inconsistencies too, small contradictions, different due dates, different stories, different details depending on who she was talking to. One evening, he sat beside me in the kitchen. "You think something's wrong, don't you?" I nodded. He sighed heavily. "So do I." That was the first time he'd admitted it. And somehow hearing him say it made everything feel more real. A few days later, Lily accidentally revealed something interesting. She was sitting at the dining table drawing while Emma scrolled through her phone nearby. Without looking up, Lily asked, "Aunt Emma, what? Can I feel the baby kick?" The room became silent. Emma froze. For a moment she looked genuinely panicked. Then she forced a smile. "The baby's sleeping." Lily frowned. "But last week you said babies sleep lots and still kick." Emma stood up immediately. "I'm tired." Then she walked away, conversation over. The reaction was bizarre, and Lily noticed it too. As spring turned into early summer, Emma became increasingly secretive. She kept her bedroom door locked. She rarely left the house. And whenever someone asked pregnancy-related questions, she changed the subject. It was as if maintaining the lie required more effort every day. Although at the time we still didn't know it was a lie, not for certs, we only knew something felt wrong. Then came the day everything changed. A Saturday afternoon. Completely ordinary, or so it seemed. James had gone shopping. I was working in the garden. Emma believed she was alone upstairs, and Lily was making one of her endless video projects. My daughter loved filming things, little challenges, funny skits, random videos for friends. She carried her tablet everywhere. That afternoon she decided she wanted to create a day in my life video. Nothing unusual, nothing important, just a child entertaining herself. What none of us realized was that her tablet would accidentally capture something far more valuable than a silly video. It would capture the truth. The truth Emma had spent 8 months desperately trying to hide. And within a matter of hours, the lie that had manipulated our entire family was about to come crashing down. Because while Emma thought she was finally alone, someone was still recording. And what appeared on that footage would leave me speechless. To this day, I can still remember the exact moment Lily came running towards me, the excitement in her voice, the confusion on her face, and the words that changed everything. "Mum," she was holding her tablet tightly. "I think Aunt Emma did something really weird." I looked up from the flower bed. Lily stood a few feet away holding her tablet. Her expression wasn't excited anymore. It was confused. Concerned, almost nervous. "Mum," she repeated, "I think Aunt Emma did something really weird." I brushed dirt from my hands and stood up. "What do you mean?" "I was recording my video." "Okay," and I left my tablet in the hallway. I smiled. "That's not unusual." "No, but..." She hesitated. "You need to see this." Something in her voice made my stomach tighten. Lily wasn't the kind of child who exaggerated things. If she thought something was strange, it was usually worth paying attention to. I followed her into the kitchen. She unlocked the tablet, opened the recording, and pressed play. At first nothing happened. The camera pointed at an empty hallway. A few minutes passed, then Emma appeared. She looked around cautiously, as if checking whether anyone was watching. My heartbeat quickened. She stepped into her bedroom. The door remained slightly open, and then I saw it. Emma lifted her shirt, reached underneath, and pulled out her pregnant belly. My entire body froze. For a moment I genuinely thought I was misunderstanding what I was seeing, but there was no misunderstanding. The large baby bump she'd been carrying for months wasn't real. It was a silicone prosthetic, a fake pregnancy belly. Emma placed it carefully on the bed, then stretched her back in relief, as if she'd finally removed an uncomfortable costume. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think, I simply stared at the screen, hoping I was wrong, knowing I wasn't. Then things got worse, much worse. A few minutes later another woman entered the room, someone I'd never seen before. The recording continued, and so did their conversation. "What a nightmare," Emma said while rubbing her stomach, her real stomach, completely flat. The woman laughed. "At least it's working." Emma grinned. "Oh, it's working perfectly." Both women laughed. My hands started shaking. "What happens when you're supposed to have the baby?" her friend asked. Emma shrugged. "I'll make something up." "What exactly?" "I don't know yet. Miscarriage maybe. Emergency complications. Adoption, something dramatic." They laughed again. Then came the sentence that made my blood run cold. "They've paid for everything for 8 months." Emma sounded proud, not ashamed, not guilty, proud. "The best part is they still believe me." I paused the video. The room fell silent. Lily looked at me nervously. "Mum," I couldn't speak. My entire world felt upside down. 8 months. 8 months of lies, 8 months of manipulation. 8 months of emotional blackmail, and every single second of it had been fake. When James returned home an hour later, I showed him the recording. At first he looked confused, then shocked, then devastated. By the time the video ended, tears had appeared in his eyes. Not because of the money, not because of the inconvenience, because Emma was his sister, and she had deliberately betrayed him. I had never seen that kind of hurt on my husband's face before. He watched the recording again, then a third time, hoping perhaps it would somehow make sense. It didn't. There was no explanation that could justify what we'd seen. No misunderstanding, no innocent reason. The truth was painfully simple. Emma had lied. That evening we made a decision. We weren't going to confront her immediately, not yet. First, we wanted the full story. And this time, we wanted evidence. Over the next few days, we quietly started checking things. What we discovered was even worse than we'd imagined. The hospital she'd claimed to be attending, she wasn't registered there. The midwife she'd mentioned didn't exist. The appointment dates she'd told us about, completely fabricated, nothing checked out, nothing. Then James did something neither of us expected. He contacted Tom. The boyfriend Emma claimed had abandoned her while pregnant. Tom agreed to meet him. The truth came out quickly. There had never been a pregnancy, not even at the beginning. According to Tom, Emma had used similar lies before. Smaller lies. Different lies, but lies all the same. And he hadn't thrown her out. She'd left after he refused to keep paying her bills. Everything she'd told us had been fiction, every word. By the end of the week, we knew enough. It was time. The confrontation happened on Sunday evening. Emma sat comfortably on the sofa watching television, eating snacks we'd paid for, living in a house we'd provided, enjoying a life she'd manipulated her way into. James switched off the television. "We need to talk." Emma immediately looked annoyed. "What now?" I placed Lily's tablet on the coffee table and pressed play. The room became silent. The further the video progressed, the paler Emma became. She knew there was no escape, no excuse, no way out. When the recording ended, nobody spoke. For several seconds, complete silence filled the room. Finally, James looked at her. "Explain." Emma opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Then she tried. "It's not what it looks like." I almost laughed. After everything we'd seen, it was the only defense she could think of. James stared at her. "What exactly does it look like, Emma?" She started crying immediately. Just like always, but this time the tears didn't work. Nobody moved. Nobody comforted her. Nobody apologized. For the first time in months, her favorite weapon had become useless. The excuses started pouring out. She was scared. She was stressed. She didn't know what to do. She meant to tell us eventually. She never intended for things to go this far. The stories kept changing. Every few minutes she invented a new explanation. Until finally James asked the question that mattered. "Why?" The room became quiet. Emma looked down, and for the first time all evening she told the truth. Because she needed somewhere to live, because she was broke. Because she didn't want to work, and because she knew we'd help if she claimed to be pregnant. That was it. No tragedy, no emergency, no desperate circumstance, just selfishness, pure selfishness. James stood up. His voice remained calm, which somehow made it worse. "You need to leave." Emma blinked. "What? You heard me. You're throwing me out." "Yes, you can't." "We can." She panicked. For the first time since arriving at our home, she genuinely looked afraid. She begged, cried, argued, even tried blaming me, claiming I'd turned James against her, but nothing worked. The evidence was undeniable, and the trust she destroyed couldn't be rebuilt. That night she packed her belongings, every suitcase, every shopping bag, every item she'd accumulated while living under our roof. And just after midnight she walked out. No apology, no remorse, only anger, as if we had somehow wronged her, as if we were the villains. The following weeks were surprisingly difficult. Not because we missed Emma, because we didn't. We missed the version of her we thought existed. The sister, the family member, the vulnerable woman who needed help. That person had never been real. And accepting that hurt, especially for James, but slowly things improved. The house felt peaceful again. The tension disappeared, our finances recovered, family dinners became enjoyable. And for the first time in months, our home felt like our home again. As for Lily, the accidental detective who uncovered everything, she became something of a family legend. Whenever relatives discussed what happened, someone would eventually say, "If Lily hadn't recorded that video," and they were right. Without her recording, Emma might have continued the lie indefinitely. She would have invented another story, another excuse, another crisis, and we'd probably have believed her. Because that's what manipulative people count on. They count on good people wanting to help. They count on trust. They count on kindness. 6 months later, we heard through relatives that Emma had moved in with another family member. Using a completely different story, a completely different crisis, a completely different lie. Some people never learn, but by then it wasn't our problem anymore. We'd finally accepted something important. Helping family is admirable. Supporting loved ones matters. Compassion matters. But compassion without boundaries can become an invitation for exploitation. And sometimes the people who hurt you most aren't strangers. They're the people sitting at your dinner table. The people calling themselves family. The people you trusted completely. Even now, when I think about everything that happened, one memory stands out above all others. Not the confrontation, not the lies, not the betrayal. It's Lily running across the garden holding that tablet. A 10-year-old girl with no idea she was carrying the truth in her hands. The truth that exposed 8 months of deception. The truth that finally set our family free. And every time I remember it, I smile. Because sometimes justice doesn't come from lawyers or investigators or dramatic courtroom battles. Sometimes justice